Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by ServPro. Same deal as yesterday. First few words, a little shaky. Much like Georgia, we're getting off a little bit of a slow start here as far as speaking goes, but as the show progresses, the voice will improve. That has been the case. That's kind of why this is the show before the show. It's a way to sort of a soft launch, if you will, of the show overall. So it's going to be, we warned you about this yesterday. I even warned about this on social media on Sunday night. It's going to be a testy, contentious week. It's going to be a testy and contentious show today. You better believe that's the case. But what a great day to have Jake Fromm on the program, because Jake knows what it's like to play in Neyland Stadium. He knows what it's like to have the spotlight on him the same way that Gunner Stockton has right now. And Jake will give us the recipe for success for Gunner and this Georgia offense today. Also, Connor Riley joining us here, too. We'll get a lot of information on exactly what is in store for Georgia against the Vols. And I will say this, on a much lighter note, people have really had a good time with what we talked about yesterday about the Florida stuff. And so before we're done, we're going to do some of that. And we're going to do some of that, I think, over the course of the next few days, because on a week in which Dog Nation is really white-knuckled, it's nice to have something to kind of lighten the mood. So to all of you who've played along with the notion of some sort of acknowledgement of the embarrassment from Florida this past weekend, I appreciate that, because you have certainly kept me in a good mood this week. Otherwise, it would be a pretty tense week, but you have certainly helped with that, and I appreciate that. Bill Camacho bringing back the Matt Rukavina line of the past, that Tennessean is not Tenna-believin'. We love it when Matt says that. I think that's a lot of fun. By the way, Matt Rukavina, speaking of him, he is in here today saying, even after we gave them their worst loss in that stupid stadium's history in 2017, he says it still wasn't revenge enough for that ridiculous Hail Mary we let them have. Yeah, obviously 2016, boy, it feels like a long time ago now. It really does. Feels like a long time ago. Nola Dog says he also still wants revenge for their horrible turf in 2015 and the Nick Chubb injury. And Nola, I understand where you're coming from on that. Will Dickerson says it's time to be alpha dogs, beat Vols bad, Trenton, Georgia. And boy, if there was ever a week for some alpha dogs to show up, Will, I would say this is one of those weeks. That's awesome. Let's see what else. By the way, Matt Rukavina back from some time in Florida. Jeremy Smith checking in. Glad to see him. Let's see how our YouTube folks are doing here today. You know, sometimes I tell you what my planning process is like. I will tell you this, that my original planning for today's show, since we did a lot of Gunner yesterday, was to almost completely avoid the Gunner topic today, because I know it's going to come back before the week is done. And I do believe that there is a lot more going on in this game than just Gunner Stockton. In fact, he may not even be, probably doesn't need to be, the most important storyline for Georgia. So my original plan was to do mostly non-Gunner related content today, especially since we had Jake coming on. I knew we'd talk to Jake about Gunner. There is just so much out there, you can't really ignore it. However, at least for a portion of the show, I'm going to talk about what does matter for Georgia beyond Gunner Stockton in this game, and why that might actually be the most important stuff of all. UGA Chris says, talking about the line movement. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a good bit of line movement. He says down to 4.5. I've even seen it down to 3.5. So pretty clearly serious line movement here. Not quite yet through what you might call a key number. And we're going to talk in a moment very nerdy about how key the actual key numbers really are. But in a roundabout way, there is not, broadly speaking, a wide degree of difference between 6.5 and 3.5. If we see anything in excess of, or, diminished below the true key numbers, then, okay, at that point in time, we're really waking up to something. But the line movement between 6.5 and 3.5 is a little overrated, but not insignificant either. Lewis Gilman says, why is Kirby still downplaying Gunner missing his targets? Lewis, that's an interesting question. I would ask the other folks in our audience to back me up on this, or maybe not. I actually don't think that Kirby is downplaying that. I think that Kirby's been pretty direct that it needs to be better. I mean, listen, there have been times in the past, in some cases the very recent past, when Kirby was downplaying everything with quarterback. Quarterback would go on the road, throw 3 interceptions, and Georgia would still win, like last October, for instance, and yet Kirby after the game, thought the quarterback was fine. There are times when Kirby Smart does downplay the quarterback. And Lewis, like I said, I'll lean on the audience to back me up on this. We're going to play some clips in a moment, post-game press conference from Saturday. I actually don't think that Georgia's downplaying this at all. I think they're talking a lot about it. I really do. I know what it sounds like when Kirby downplays something. Sometimes he has in the past. I actually don't think that's what he's doing right now. UGA Chris says Gunner needs to let it rip. We're going to talk today about maybe how he can do that. Dr. Gonzo weighing in here today, too. Chris says Tennessee fans are moving that line because they're overconfident. Well, guess what? If that's true, in our lifetimes, that would not be the first time these Tennessee fans have had an abundance of abundance of confidence minus any discernible evidence. Would not be the first time that was the case if it proves to be that way. Brandon Griffin says our defense is going to be the big story this weekend. And in a roundabout way, Brandon, I think you need to be right for Georgia to win this game. I think you could be right. And on today's show, we're going to talk more about why that might be the case. In fact, speaking of today's show, let me tell you more about it as we get ready to fire up that animation. Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by ServPro. Glad to have you with us. We do a little show before the show, and then when we put the show up on demand, we chop that off. That way we can get right to it. And so I've had a little bit of a voice thing going on. So to our people who join us live right from the very start, they have to listen to me sort of work through whatever gravel I have going on right now. And by the time you get to this point, all of a sudden, I'm hopefully maybe not quite silky smooth, not quite velvet, but nonetheless, as good as it's probably going to be here for right now. Eventually, we're going to try to shut up for a couple of days and see if we can rest this thing a bit. But I think for now, for the most part, it sounds okay. The point is, we have an unbelievable show on tap for you today. Jake Fromm later on, directly from a guy who knows Gunner well, but also knows the position that Gunner plays and has done it at Neyland Stadium in a hostile environment. What's it going to take for Georgia here this week? Jake's going to have good stuff on that. Connor Riley also stops by, too. That's going to be really important. We're going to talk about the stuff unrelated to Gunner Stockton, about how Georgia can win the game on Saturday against Tennessee, including a fairly sound piece of logic on this game that I don't know gets common consideration from fans. We're going to do that here over the course of the time. I'm going to get really, really nerdy for a couple of seconds on projections and predictions and just what we are likely to see on Saturday. We'll do that for a couple of seconds. But off the top, we are in, many of us anyway, a very comfortable position in that much like the big games of the past, it just seems like the whole world is lining up against Georgia right now, including even a guy we would think of as one of our own. Even he, in front of a friendly crowd of Tennessee fans this week, telling those Vols fans everything they wanted to hear, perhaps really putting Georgia on blast a bit too in the process. What does this mean for Kirby Smart, Gunner Stockton, and the Georgia Bulldogs on Saturday? Apparently right now, nobody thinks they can win. Feels like we've been here before. Let's talk about it. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by ServPro. Cleaning, restoration, construction.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
You know, every now and then you go and speak to a different audience than maybe your normal audience. And, you know, as a speaker, you're always aware of the audience that I'm speaking to has a certain set of expectations for this conversation. And it can be a little bit easy to want to play into the expectations of that audience. Is what I'm about to share with you an example of that? Well, I'll let you decide for yourself. As it relates to Aaron Murray, the former Georgia quarterback, we would think of him as a Georgia great, record-setting quarterback in this program. But this week, he spoke at the Knoxville Touchdown Club up there in what we would think of anyway as enemy territory. The folks from VolQuest, that's the On3 site that covers Tennessee, they were there. And I'll give a free plug for this. If you're a member of one of these sites, you can read the enemy sites too, which I don't think is certainly a bad value, all things considered. Well, when you have the former Georgia quarterback in front of the Tennessee audience, there is going to be a lot said about Georgia and Tennessee, and most this week, based on the reporting of what Aaron Murray told a very pro-Tennessee crowd about Georgia, was frankly very unflattering. Some of it about the team overall, some of it specifically about Gunner Stockton. I'd call these harsh words, judge for yourself. Let me read you a couple of quotes as collected by Grant Ramey, the reporter for Tennessee working for VolQuest. Murray says, "I do not like what I see on tape from the Georgia football team, to be honest at all. It's a lot of worry in the state of Georgia, and for no good reason. The tape don't lie," he says, and the tape is not being good for Georgia on offense. The first two games of the season against what you can consider lesser opponents, Marshall and Austin Peay, he says, "I think that Gunner Stockton's a good quarterback. I think Gunner has potential, but as we talk about Joey Aguilar, he's mentioning here, his ability to kind of whip it like a shortstop and get the ball in his hands in the RPO world, Gunner lacks that right now. Gunner," he says, "does not throw with anticipation." Now, before I read more from Aaron Murray, can I pause for a moment and perhaps date myself with a reference? Now, this movie came out before I was born, but people of my age, for whatever reason, have always loved this movie. Do you know The Godfather, the mafia movie from the early 1970s? There's a moment in that when the venerable patriarch of the Corleone family, Vito Corleone, says to one of his sons, "Don't ever tell anybody outside the family what you're thinking, ever." I can't help but admit I sort of feel this way about Aaron Murray going up to this pro-Tennessee crowd in Knoxville, telling them everything that they want to hear. And of course, people will come back and say, "Yeah, but BA, he's trying to be a TV analyst. He can't just be a Georgia fan." All right, he's been out of school since 2013. How well is that working out? I guess we'll let people figure that out. But nonetheless, Murray goes to Knoxville, says what he says here. Gunner Stockton not impressed with him thus far. Let's find out more about this right now. He says that Gunner is a little bit long in his delivery when it comes to getting it out of the RPO world. The quick hitches, the bubbles, the screens on the outside. And I think that there's some confidence that lacking in him in the moment. And the last thing you want from a guy that's played in that stadium twice and knows how difficult it is to play in Neyland and how loud and intimidating and how you ain't going to have a voice after four quarters, he means because you're having to try to shout over the sound of the crowd. The last thing that you need is lacking confidence heading into this ball game. So I worry about him and his confidence. Now, on this point, I would say most Georgia fans do feel exactly the same way. That if your confidence is shaky after an Austin Peay game, and we played the clip for you yesterday, Stockton admitted that was the case, that he says you just got to be more confident, got to be more comfortable. Stockton himself has admitted to dealing with some confidence issues. The notion that you would be more confident now going into a more hostile environment against a better team, that doesn't seem easy to do. In fact, later on in today's show, we'll ask Jake Fromm exactly how it is that Gunner Stockton's going to be able to do that. I'm sure Jake will have some interesting things to say. But beyond that, Aaron Murray wasn't done. Not just critical of Gunner Stockton, which in some cases is fair. We don't dispute that. But also really laying it on the line that, as he sees it, Tennessee may just be the better team right now. This is Aaron Murray again. He says, "I want to put my Georgia hat on, and I want to say that Georgia's going to beat your you-know-what so bad, but I can't say that confidently. As an ESPN employee, I put my Georgia hat away and just call the game for what it is. I think that Tennessee is in a better position right now to go out there and have success. I think that Tennessee is more confident. I think that Tennessee is, listen to this, is a better team than Georgia. Massive home field advantage." We don't dispute that it's a massive home field advantage for Tennessee. And as I told you yesterday, for whatever reason, it's becoming much harder to win on the road in the SEC. I also don't dispute that it's not easy to confidently, emphatically pick Georgia to win this game right now. You'll notice through a day and a half's worth of shows thus far this week, I haven't exactly done that just yet. But I would dispute that it's obvious on paper that somehow Tennessee is the better team, given the fact that Georgia has dominated Tennessee in every game the two teams have played dating back to 2017. The notion that now, magically just like that, Tennessee is, to use Murray's phrase, the better team. While I'm not quite so sure about Georgia, I am certainly not that confident in Tennessee either. And I think whatever confidence Murray expressed in front of a Vols crowd that you better believe is lapping every single word he's saying up, I think that confidence is probably misplaced. However, this is not just a former UGA great maybe turning on his own in front of a crowd that was no doubt loving every bit of that. You've also got other analysts coming out of the woodworks too. Georgia fans have been here before, big game. It's even been true for Tennessee in the past, where the analysts are just out in full force, essentially laughing at Georgia right now. You know Joel Klatt. He's the Fox Sports analyst. He goes on a show I really like in Birmingham called The Next Round. They do streaming video a little bit like we do. I think they do a good job, mostly from an Alabama, Auburn-centric perspective. He's on that show, and he is, boy, just having a good time at what he thinks maybe the demise of Georgia right now, or set for a disappointing downfall at the hands of Tennessee. You know Joel Klatt. You're perhaps not surprised at the jabs that he took at Gunner Stockton in Georgia overall. And if Murray's a little skeptical in Georgia, maybe Joel Klatt's even more skeptical than that.
Georgia's starting quarterback had to throw 34 passes against Austin Peay?
Yep.
Guys, if Julian Sayin or Dante Moore would have thrown 34 passes against Austin Peay, they would have scored 873,000 points.
So who wins this week? Tennessee or Georgia?
I kind of like Tennessee. Like at home, they've looked really solid. They're clearly internally motivated. Aguilar looks like a quality player. Georgia better watch out. I'm really, really thinking about just picking Tennessee straight up.
Well, either do it or don't. Don't laugh at Gunner Stockton throwing 34 passes against Austin Peay and talk about, Georgia better watch out, and then punctuate the line with, boy, I'm really thinking about picking Tennessee. Listen, nobody's hanging on a limb or holding on by a string to find out who Joel Klatt picks in this game. If you're going to pick Tennessee, then just do it, but don't try to play both sides of the fence on this. And this idea that, Georgia better watch out. Listen, I don't know what happens on Saturday. I'm as nervous as I can be. Many of y'all know that. But once again, most of us feel like we've been here before with internet blowhards like Klatt saying, Georgia better watch out. Yeah, I know. We've heard that before, and now we're hearing that again before this game. It is maybe to you not that big of a surprise that when it comes to the doom and gloom proclamations about Georgia and the casual dismissal of who Gunner Stockton is as a quarterback at the moment, that Tennessee coach Josh Heupel is not buying that. When he looks at Stockton, at least according to Heupel's own words, he sees a pretty dangerous football player. This is what Heupel said yesterday.
He's played really well. You look at him this year, he's taking great care of the football. He's been accurate with it. He's got the ability to be extremely mobile and extend and create plays on his own. You got to do a great job of applying pressure, but still bottling him up inside of the pocket, not letting him get outside of it. And if they choose, he certainly can be a part of the quarterback run game as well and try to tilt the numbers. So huge test for us defensively. Communication will be important. All the shift trade motion before the snap of the football as well. We got to be at our best.
I made a small gambling point yesterday that's worth considering if you ever plan on putting your hard-earned money at risk on a wager, is that when it comes to a popular bet, the over-under, don't always assume that bad quarterback play correlates to unders. Sometimes it doesn't. Turnovers lead to pick sixes. Turnovers lead to short fields. Short fields lead to punts. Sometimes bad quarterbacks play actually sends the game over the total. And I do think job one for Georgia on Saturday is to find a way to play this game at a pace that's comfortable, which means that Gunner Stockton, as Josh Heupel alludes to, does need to, if he can, play turnover-free football. But there is also the, high risk, high reward part of football as well, which is you can play a style of game that limits your potential for turning it over, at least theoretically, but also in doing so, you also limit any chance you have to make any big plays whatsoever. And you clearly can't do that in this game on Saturday, that at some point you are going to have to turn it loose. And the ball's going to have to be into a tight window, and you're just going to have to live with the consequences that you are going to have to put it at risk to gain the rewards necessary to move the offense down the field. And as Kirby Smart explained yesterday, the truth is that the theoretically lower risk plays aren't always as low risk as you might think they might be anyway. This is Kirby Smart talking about that yesterday.
Well, as we've learned, you can turn it over on any play, right? I mean, we had a running play that was a turnover, so nothing's inherently perfect or safe. I think passing the ball down the field is not necessarily – it's one of the lower turnover rates there is. I mean, the pass that we did get as a turnover was a short intermediate passing game that a guy fumbled after he caught it. So, I mean, there's a good and bad for both. I mean, you can't turn the ball over and make good offense. You got to prevent turnovers. But you also have to have ability to throw it down the field and hit some shots and be explosive. But I don't think that would keep you from doing it, thinking about turnovers.
So listen, I mean, there is an element on a show like this, on a day like today, where we're going to circle the wagons a little bit because you got, national analysts saying whatever, people we think of as one of our own, they're saying whatever. People are just going to have a lot to say going into a game like this. And for Georgia fans, it feels like, oh, we've been here before. We've heard this sort of stuff before. And there's always going to be a tendency to want to unite together when the whole world seems to be against you. But there is also just a gut-level truth that for Gunner, after having started a college football playoff game, now started 2 games at home, he is getting ready to go on the road, and he does, just a fact here, he does have to play better. Well, how does he find the confidence to do that, knowing the situation is actually more challenging than the last 2 weeks have been? Well, yesterday, Kirby Smart also talked about that as well.
I think it's going to be great. I mean, it's something that we practice for all year round. I don't believe in waiting until the week of the game. We do it in spring. We do it all preseason camp. We put a lot of pressure on the players in practice to communicate. A lot of times it's to keep both sides of the ball from hearing each other talk. So we want there to be – I don't want to hear the coaches talk. So you got to crank it up, and it almost becomes the norm to do that. But there's also a defense over there that you're trying to simulate, and that's hard to simulate because they are very good defensively. They create a lot of issues, very intelligent with their defensive staff in terms of protections, looks. They know what you're thinking, and they try to counter that. So that's the hurdle for us offensively that we all have to get over, is making sure we understand what they're trying to do and understand what we're trying to do and do it better than they do it.
And listen, the sort of landed gentry that goes to some of these scrimmages will tell you, certainly the second scrimmage, I didn't hear this as much out of the first scrimmage, but the second scrimmage that's a little bit more of an exclusive group that seems to go to that one, but they were telling you that Gunner Stockton had a great day that day against a defense that we believe is still better than the one he's going to face on Saturday. And so if Gunner can throw deep down the field against the Georgia defense, we're told that he has, then he ought to be able to do that against the Tennessee defense too. Well, how does Georgia, and Gunner Stockton in particular, how are they going to be more successful with their deep shot passing attack, trying to find some big plays down the field? More from Kirby Smart on that.
Well, success comes through throwing and catching it and getting opportunities to do that. We didn't protect long enough in some of our opportunities to get a chance to do that. So first thing is, what can we do, right? We're running the ball successfully. We ran the ball successfully and ran it, down their throats for the most part. When we do take shots, we want to keep a clean pocket. And he was able to do a lot of good things for us in terms of when the pocket's not clean, of not being 2nd and 20 or 2nd and 15, and instead we're 2nd and 8, avoiding some really long situations or giving up sacks. But certainly we want to be able to improve down the field passing game. I think that comes a little bit off of what we talked about before. How is the defense playing you? And different defenses play different ways.
So listen, I think that Smart's overall point there, we all understand that confidence in yourself also depends on what you have around you. And offensive line's got to play well and perhaps better than it has played. Georgia spins big on some, we think, good wide receivers. They've got to be a part of this offense. We talked about that yesterday. You've got to be able to lean on those guys. And if you're not fully confident yourself, be confident who you're throwing it to, that guy is going to go out and make a play and do something for you. And we're going to talk more about this in a moment on a separate subject, but if the Georgia running game is what Georgia has been working all off season for it to be, then that also helps as well. All of that goes together. But eventually this comes back to what I alluded to a moment, which is you've got to find a way to show in a game what apparently you've been doing in practice, which is why the Georgia coaches selected you as really the emphatic winner. To the extent this was ever a quarterback competition, Stockton, we're told, was the emphatic winner of that competition. And now you got to match that performance in a game, and Smart also talked about that yesterday too.
Well, I don't think it's about him. I think it's about the 11 people with him, right? So when we say we want to see Gunner do that and see it carry over, it requires the 11 people doing exactly what they did in practice for him to have success. Because in an offensive unit, one guy can mess up, and that ruins that entire play. Typically on defense, one guy can mess up, and it may not affect the play if it's not attacking that side. But there's several instances, one guy's off, one guy's not at the right depth, one guy doesn't protect, or maybe Gunner. But you can't have cumulative effect of those things and be effective. And we didn't. We really were very effective outside of really one drive. But outside of that, we were very effective with what we've done, and got to continue to do that. I've seen them execute well in practice, and we want to continue to see that.
All right, let me sum all this up this way. I think that Georgia probably likes what's going on. And it's not because they know how it's going to turn out. The truth is I'm kind of right there with some of the analysts in that I'm not really quite so sure how this game's going to play out. It would be an easy way for me to get a lot of clicks to say, here's why I know that Georgia's going to win the game big. Like, I'm not in the habit of lying.
He's explosive in practice.
I'm not going to lie to you. Can we all live in that? I'm not going to lie to you about this. I just don't know. But I do think that Georgia's comfortable in this spot when media's doubting, when fans are doubting, when the negative chatter exists around the program. Kirby Smart, who doesn't exactly love externalities as it is, knows that moments like this give the team a chance to turn inward to each other and lean on each other when you don't have the entire world around you patting you on the back. Even some folks you think of as friendlies, even when they're not patting you on the back, then it just gives you more of a chance to turn inward to each other. I think that Kirby Smart's really comfortable in that environment. In fact, we saw some of that yesterday with Colbie Young. Young had a huge game for Georgia, and really when they needed somebody to step up against Austin Peay. We think he's going to be a huge part of this Georgia offense here this season. And when you want to get an example of the connection that Georgia has used well in the past, that has been served well by in the past, listening to the way in which Colbie Young believes in Gunner Stockton, the way in which Colbie Young trusts Gunner Stockton to deliver him the football and keep this Georgia offense moving, this is the sort of connection that really good Georgia teams have been built on in the past. I'm sure Kirby is hoping that rematerializes ahead of Saturday, an example of that from Colbie Young yesterday.
He's explosive in practice. I've seen him make unbelievable next level plays. He has an unbelievable arm. I like to say he's kind of like a Russell Wilson type, the way he puts the ball in the air and he just drop it in the bucket. But when we play defenses that are not allowing us to throw that, we got to make sure just don't force it. We got a great running game, and just stay confident in yourself. It's going to come eventually. We got a long season ahead, and we're going to have a successful season throwing the ball. So just stay confident it's going to come.
And on the subject of confidence, I thought that Colbie Young also said something interesting yesterday, that he has observed at practice the way that Stockton has thrived in the face of what might be adversity. If something's not going well for him, how much of a demand Stockton puts on himself to succeed and overcome whatever might be facing him at the moment. And what Young described yesterday could very well be on display internally within Gunner going into this big test on Saturday too. Here's one more from Colbie Young.
He's just such a hard worker. You know, if he misses the throw, he's like, dude, I got to get this, so let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. He just wants to be perfect, and we always tell him, like, nobody's perfect in this world, Gunner. Like, you'll be all right. And he's like, no, I got to get it. Like, I got to do this again. So just in his confidence and his wanting to be great just instills in us to, like, we got to be better. We got to play up to his level and just keep him as confident as possible.
So here's a question. Do you think someone who brings a I've got to keep doing it until it's perfect mentality to practice is going to tap out ahead of this game against Tennessee on Saturday? That's an obvious answer. Of course, the answer is no. And for a Georgia wide receiver core that says, hey, we're going to keep building our guy up, making sure he's confident. In other words, we're going to turn inward, work together, form a union with each other, the way the great Georgia teams in the past. Is that the sort of thing that would make you a little bit more confident in Georgia on Saturday, even if you're not quite so sure how the game's going to work out? I think it probably should. In other words, we have been here before. Analysts and Georgia people and whatever else. They've all seen enough. They know little old Georgia ain't got a shot at big old bad Tennessee. Now, the truth is, a lot of us are not quite so sure this game's going to play out. But we know Georgia has done hard things in the past. And it wouldn't surprise any of us if they find a way to do it all over again this Saturday. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro. We're glad you're with us. Busy off the top. Going to keep it moving fast here. Two great guests coming up. Connor Riley in a moment. Jake Fromm before we're done. All of it brought to you by our friends at ServPro. Now, yes, after 2 weeks of the season, Georgia's got a bit of a mess to clean up. No one denies that. However, in your life, you may even have a more substantial mess that needs cleaned up, caused fire damage, water intrusion. These are things that happen around this time of year all across the Southeast. Certainly, you have weather-related catastrophe, roofs cave in because of storms, and this is just something that goes on a lot. If this is your story, ServPro wants to help you. And I'm talking about, in some cases, you're thinking large-scale cleanup that may expand beyond multiple city blocks. They can run point on an entire cleanup process like that. Or let's just say in your house, it's a grease fire in the kitchen, or a roof cave in, or a water pipe breaks. Well, listen, for you, that's a huge mess to clean up too, and ServPro wants to work with you on all of that. The restoration specialists want to get your property restored to its previous condition, looking like it never even happened. That is what they are all about. We love our folks at ServPro. We're thankful they serve so many folks in our audience. In fact, serve is in their name. So find them today online, servpro.com for more on that. That's servpro.com for more on that today. All right, Jake Fromm coming up. We're going to talk to him specifically about how Gunner gets more confidence going into Saturday than maybe he showed last week, based on his own words, and what it's like playing up there on Rocky Top. Jake Fromm won there twice. He is a great resource for us to have on a day like this. Also, it's Connor Riley just around the corner, too. Prior to that, let's go around the doghouse. Poured today by our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. I'm telling you right now, on a day like this, I could use a little Mercier Orchards Hard Cider to just stay relaxed and have a good time. But nonetheless, let's dive into this way. This is initially what I wanted to spend more time talking about on the show. We're going to do it now for just a couple of minutes because obviously the Gunner stuff is still so prominent. You feel like you have to discuss that. And for about 2 seconds here, can I be really nerdy? So you maybe have, someone would say better than anybody because I'll do it for more than 2 seconds, but that's true. But in this particular instance, you may have seen, in addition to Klatt and Murray and all these guys that have seemingly soured on Georgia, you may have also seen the point spread is dropping dramatically too. At one point in time this week, when I first saw it at 6.5, maybe it opened at 7.5. The look-ahead line for most of the last few weeks was more like 6.5. So I think of this as about a 6.5 point line. It has now dropped now to where I think it's pretty commonly found at 3.5. Seems like a pretty significant drop, and to the extent that it is, it's still within what you think of as key numbers. So it may not be quite what it's cracked up to be. But let me nerd out on the idea of the 3.5 point spread for a moment. A lot of you know I used the phrase key number before. That 3 in football, generally speaking, is a key number. The reason why it's thought of as a key number is it is a common final margin of victory. Field goal, for instance, a lot of games end with a 1 field goal advantage for the winner or the loser. And in college football, that's true. About 9.2% of the time, if you want to get like really nerdy about this, about 9.2% of the time, a game in college football will end with exactly 3-point margin of victory. That's key number. But do you know that it's not quite as key as it would be in the NFL, where more even league, more balanced talent, NFL games finish exactly 3 points with a margin of victory 15% of the time. So 3 is a key number. It is not quite as key in college as it is in the NFL, which means that while a 3-point margin of victory thereabouts is the most likely outcome for Saturday, there is still a 90% chance that the final margin of victory won't be 3 points. Does that make sense? Are you following me on this? And that matters. And by the way, the skinny little half point that Georgia is favored in excess of the field goal right now would also matter too, because in a game that will probably finish around 3, but also more likely than not a different margin of victory, there's still a little bit of an extra lean on Georgia on that, and I think that matters. In other words, the likelihood of this game being 2 even teams playing even all the way through 60 minutes with a field goal deciding it, the actual chance of that coming true, even if that's the point spread, is still slightly less than 10%. So for Georgia to be the truly better team that emerges on Saturday, showing some distance and margin between itself and Tennessee, the same way it has in all of its previous trips to Neyland Stadium, what's that about for Georgia? How is it that you do that if you are Georgia? Well, I think for me, that gets back to what Kirby and Georgia have been talking about for the entirety of the offseason. They want to run it better. They want to play better rush defense. They want to be the more physical team on Saturday. And if Georgia truly is the more physical team on Saturday, then all the stuff related to Gunner Stockton, frankly, becomes just one of the storylines going on in the game, and perhaps not the dominant prevailing storyline, which is probably, to be honest, what Georgia wants it to be. But in order for Georgia to succeed that way, it also needs to understand that while we think of Tennessee as a spread-it-out, play-fast team, at their heart, in their nucleus, they're actually a lot more conventional SEC than you might think. Kirby Smart said that yesterday. Take a listen to this.
They're a playoff team from last year that we've had some really, really physical games with. It'll be no different. They are built around toughness, running the ball and stopping the run, which they're very good at both. And I think people have a mistake about their offense that it scores so many points, but they are very physical. And you look at last year's game between both teams, both lines of the scrimmage were extremely physical, and it's been that way every time we've played each other. So won't be any different this time.
So that is the message, that Tennessee, more physical you might think. Georgia, that's what its reputation is based on. If it's still that version of Georgia, the Georgia that gets the rushing yards that it wants and needs, the Georgia defense that prevents you from doing the same thing, then maybe this can feel like other previous trips to Neyland Stadium have felt like, where Georgia finds the way to get the comfortable victory that Georgia fans enjoy. If that's the case, as Gunner Stockton still working through being a first-time full-year starting quarterback, Georgia can still, I don't want to say coast to victory, but maybe it can win with some comfort on Saturday, as long as it does what it has stated as its offseason mission actually is. And that is Around the Doghouse. It's poured today by our friends at Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. We're in that time of year where it's apple picking season. We're really in that season up in Blue Ridge, Georgia, because the apples that make Mercier Orchards Hard Cider are really grown right here in Georgia. And they really do come from a gorgeous orchard, 200 acres, a couple hundred acres at least, stretched all across the North Georgia mountains here, you can go see the apples get picked. You can pick some of those apples yourself, and you can monitor and observe the way that the Mercier Orchards hard cider gets put into cans. It's one of the reasons why I love having Mercier Orchards hard cider as a part of DawgNation Daily, because it is a Georgia-grown company. We're so proud of stuff like that. And if you want a really fun alcoholic beverage that has an amazing profile of flavors, you want something a little dry, a little tart, or you want something really sweet that has a combination of sweet flavors, peach, apple, and everything that goes with that, we think Mercier Orchards is a great thing for you to try. And when you go to your local supermarket, if you don't see it, I want you to ask for it. Or the favorite beverage store of yours. If you don't see it, I want you to ask for it there. And in some restaurants, it's also on tap. You can even ask for it at your favorite restaurant as well to enjoy it on tap. And boy, what a great experience that is. They even have some special flavors and varieties when you enjoy it on tap. So I want you to, the easiest way to do this is probably just search. Search Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. And Mercier is spelled Mercier. It's mercier-orchards.com/hard-cider. You can also just search Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. Comes from Blue Ridge, grown right here in Georgia. We are in apple picking season. A great time for you to enjoy some Mercier Orchards Hard Cider. Lot to do, plenty to talk about. Georgia trying to figure out how to beat Tennessee. By the way, Vols a little banged up. Before we get to Jake Fromm later on, let's talk to Connor Riley here right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Let me say hello to Connor Riley. And Connor, just briefly before we get to the Georgia stuff, let me do the Tennessee part of this for a moment. Tennessee, 2 corners banged up. I guess they played backups last week. Seemed like they were fine against lesser competition. There's a little something out there about maybe David Sanders a little bit too. Obviously, yesterday I watched the Josh Heupel press conference. These SEC coaches now for the SEC games, they're just not giving really anything as it relates to injuries anymore. Heupel completely sidestepped the question in a way that you don't always think of Heupel necessarily doing. How healthy do you think Tennessee is going into Saturday's game, and how much do you think it matters?
I'm not sure how much it matters, but I do think that this team is a little banged up. I believe I've seen some Tennessee people say they could be out as many as 4 starters on the defensive side of the ball. And we'll get somewhat of a better idea on Wednesday night when the first SEC availability report comes out for this game. But I think in this day and age, these SEC coaches have just become more and more secretive in terms of the way injuries are and the way things are going. And Kirby Smart is as guilty as anyone in that regard. So I certainly can't fault Josh Heupel in that regard for playing this close to the chest. But it sounds like they're going to be without their top 2 corners. We'll see if they're without a very talented and promising but true freshman offensive lineman playing by far the best defense you will possibly see this season in Georgia.
So let me talk about this for a moment, because it feels like in some respects Georgia's been here before. Prominent voices counting Georgia out against Tennessee, or just a big game the likes of which is going to play on Saturday. But in 2022, when the whole world lined up against Georgia, odds makers didn't budge. Georgia was a substantial favorite at home against Tennessee, and we saw really no movement in the direction of Tennessee, no matter how loud the call for the Vols came. We've already seen decent amount of early movement, not really through a key number yet, or at least for the most part. But unlike in the past, when line did not move, when the public spoke out, this time it kind of has. How fair are the doubts of Georgia right now?
I think they're legitimate based on what we've seen from Gunner Stockton to this point in time. Yes, he hasn't turned the ball over. He has not taken a sack. But they've played Marshall, a team that lost to FCS Missouri State this past week, and Austin Peay, who I actually think Austin Peay is the best team Georgia's played on their schedule at this point. And he has not made the plays that were there. He hasn't, taken anything off the table, to sort of use a metaphor there, but he hasn't shown up to this party bringing anything positive. And maybe he's able to do stuff with his legs, and I think Tennessee is certainly going to be aware of that. But with his arm, when they've dropped back, they have not taken advantage. They have not pushed the ball downfield. I believe the number I've seen is 5.1 air yards per completion. That is the lowest among Power 4 starting quarterbacks. It's essentially how far you're throwing the football downfield. Almost all of the work is coming at or near the line of scrimmage. And I like the talent Georgia has in this receiver room. I think Colbie Young has shown that he can be a very important player for this team. Zachariah Branch, every time he has caught a pass for Georgia, he has turned it into an explosive play thus far. And so Gunner's got to find a way to get the ball in his hands. There is no quarterback controversy at this point in time. Gunner is the guy for the Georgia offense. But he's got to go out there and play really big in a way that we haven't seen him necessarily do to this point. Yes, he made some nice plays in the win over Texas, but he was 71 yards passing that day for 16 yards, very similar recipe, a lot of short stuff near the line of scrimmage. And against Notre Dame, I just think the game got away from him, and that maybe inflated his stats in some regard there. So he's got to go out there and I think show something that we just have not yet see him do that.
So I have been very consistent about Gunner Stockton now for almost a full year. Even after the SEC championship, my point has always remained that I want Gunner to be one of the good things going on for Georgia, but he is not putting this entire team on his shoulders. Even after he came in and played a little bit of a hero's role in the SEC championship, we still didn't oversell the hype going in the Notre Dame game. We cautioned concern about a first-time starting quarterback in that game, and we have maintained something pretty close to that over the course of the last few months. Given what you saw from Gunner against Austin Peay, is it still true that Georgia can lean on run game, lean on defense, those things that it has stated it wants this year to be about, and that can be enough for a recipe for victory? Or does it have to look to Gunner Stockton and say, you got to be more than this? How much, in other words, can the young, not quite so young, but inexperienced starting quarterback, how much of that can truly be minimized on Saturday?
He's got to be more than I think he was against Austin Peay, where I agree he doesn't need to go out there and be the reason Georgia wins the game. But when plays present themselves for him, and they were on tape, it looked to be, he's got to show that he's able to make them. Colbie Young made a very interesting comparison yesterday to Russell Wilson, and this is not necessarily the best time to compare a quarterback to Russell Wilson, given how bad he looked for the Giants on Saturday. But when Russell Wilson was at his most successful, where he won a Super Bowl, with the Seattle Seahawks and nearly won a second one, yes, Seattle was successful because they were able to lean on Marshawn Lynch and they were able to lean on their incredible defense. But he still made plays and pushed the ball downfield. His deep passing is what earned him a lot of praise, along with great intangibles that he brings to the table. We know Gunner does that. When the plays are available for Gunner, he needs to go out there and make them. And I think that's maybe, to me, the most concerning thing. He doesn't need to throw for 400 yards. He doesn't need to throw for 4 touchdowns and be the way I think Georgia asked Carson Beck to be the guy last year. But when plays are available, especially against lesser competition like they were Austin Peay, you have to show that you're willing to make them. And I think, to me, that's the most concerning thing I saw to Gunner this past week.
So let's do some reckless speculation here for a moment. The rumor mill seems to think that Gaston may be fine. I'm pretty suspicious of that. That's a very big guy with an ankle. I just don't know. I just don't know about that. But neither one of us are doctors. You got any thought on Ernest Green? Any guess as to how healthy Georgia's going to be on the offensive line?
I feel fairly confident that Ernest Green is going to start and be able to play this entire game. And I think he would have been able to do that if they had played Tennessee last week. I'm with you in the skepticism regarding Juan Gaston. I think it's more of a knee injury, an MCL injury, than it is necessarily a pure ankle injury. I found it interesting that we could not see Gaston on the sideline last week. And so this presents, I think, a very interesting opportunity for this Georgia offensive line where, coming out of the Austin Peay game, I think you feel better about what you have in Dontrell Glover and Bo Hughley than necessarily the two guys, Michael Weenie and Jaw Jackson, who started that game. And you hear Kirby Smart talk so much about Georgia finding their best 5 offensive linemen. I wonder if this week for Georgia's offensive line, their 5 best offensive linemen are Monroe Freeling, Micah Morris, Drew Bobo, Ernest Green, and Bo Hughley. And maybe do you see Georgia move Ernest Green down into guard to get that best 5 on the field? That way you're also, even though I think they love what Dontrell Glover has brought to the table, you're not throwing him in there and starting him on the road for his first career start in Rocky Top, an incredibly loud environment. So I'm very interested in seeing how they mix and match the offensive line this week because, like you, I share some skepticism that Juan Gaston is going to be 100%. And even when he was in that game against Marshall, he didn't exactly light the world on fire with how he played specifically in pass pro. And that's going to be something very important in a loud Tennessee environment this weekend.
I think that it's been interesting to me how open Georgia's been most about this. Now, they don't reveal a lot about injuries, but in terms of the offensive line needing to play better, I think that Kirby's been pretty candid about that. In terms of the passing attack needing to have some, even even stopping short of congratulating the team on Saturday for some of the short, successful throws in the first half, Kirby didn't really play into that too much. I do think it's interesting how, typically cards close to the vest, sometimes Kirby is, but the overall message of offensive line's got to protect, give time to throw, Gunner's got to stand there and rip it when he does have time to throw. I think that George has actually been pretty candid about a lot of this, and I do think that's at least kind of interesting.
And that's been a change since I think the start of the 2024 season, where in certain instances we have seen Kirby be a little bit more candid. I think obviously most famously when you think back last year to the Jake Pope comments after the Ole Miss game. But when things aren't going well for Georgia, he's not going to, like he maybe was in the past when Georgia was still winning by a significant margin and winning with ease, try and tell you that things were fine. I found it interesting that Gunner was willing to be candid about some of the confidence issues that he was dealing with after the game. And Kirby bluntly, who often understandably likes to wait to see the game on tape and sort of see how things go, said in the postgame on Saturday, we need Gunner to be more explosive. And yes, some of that can be in the short area and how they do in that regard. But pushing the bar downfield, I think, is going to be so important for this team. Not something they need to do a ton of, but again, when those plays are available, you have to make them. And I think that with these receivers and with these tight ends that they have, they're going to be able to get and scheme guys open. The plays have to be made, because if they're not, I equate it in a way, and this is going to sound like a weird analogy to some. Ben Simmons' problem in the NBA world, it wasn't that he was a bad three-point shooter. There are tons of bad three-point shooters in the NBA. The reason that he has failed so spectacularly is because he just stopped taking and shooting the ball altogether. You need to at least attempt those passes and make those plays when they're presented to you. Otherwise, that's when you sort of get into the unplayable zone, because teams just know how to defend you if you're not going to take those shots at all.
Okay, so I want to finish with this, and we honestly have not talked about this nearly as much as we should. Before the week is over, we will. I hope I'm not wrong. Sometimes my predictions are, I think this Georgia defense might be back. I don't know if they've got the real space eater in the middle when you play a spread team that just by sheer force of will can dissuade the rushing attack. But overall, man, I like Joseph Jonah-Jonye. I like Gabe Harris. Some of these questionable spots seem to have pretty emphatic answers, or at least the potential for emphatic answers. Chris Cole on third down, man, that seems like it might be what we thought it could be. I think I might like this Georgia defense. Ellis Robbins going to pick up. I think I might like this Georgia defense, Connor.
To this point, they have checked every box they can possibly check. There is nothing that you can say about this Georgia defense from what they have done on the field, I think, to disagree with the notion that you have. The only skepticism that I still have, and even if I think they play exceptionally well against Tennessee on Saturday, I'm still going to have it to an extent, because this Georgia defense just, I think, has always figured out a Josh Heupel offense, is what do they look like against better competition? And, that's something that it's unfair to hold this team to that standard in terms of what they've seen. So I think for Georgia on Saturday, again, if you continue to see what you've seen, and I thought you nailed it on Joseph Jonah-Jonye. I wrote about him this morning. The plays that he made on the goal line stand, I think, were really impactful and really interesting. We've seen Raylan Wilson make big plays before, and we see Daniel Everett do that. Joseph Jonah-Jonye just using his size and speed to win, I think, is a welcome addition to this Georgia defense, because it just gives you more and more answers for what opposing offenses might be able to do to you. And so if you have Christian Miller making plays, Jordan Hall, Xavier McLeod, Elijah Griffin continues to look good. We feel great about that inside linebacker core. And then these corners with what they have. Yes, I still have some questions. I think the weakest part of the defense right now is that safety stars positions. But with what they have, they just have so many answers for what opposing offenses might be able to throw at them. And I think we're going to get closer to getting a true evaluation of how talented and how, quote-unquote, back this defense might be on Saturday against Tennessee.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up real quick, and then I'll let you go, because we got, obviously, I know you got a lot to do today too. But you say, Georgia always figures out the Josh Heupel offense. My belief is, even though Georgia has dominated at Neyland Stadium, I don't have this as one of those games. I think that Georgia will win, but I take what happened in the SEC, like, say, last November, pretty seriously. Somewhere along the way, somebody flipped a switch, and it became very hard to win on the road. And it just like that, it changed. I don't know if it's fireworks or drones. I don't know what it is, but it became very hard to win the SEC. And I think recent past in the SEC probably prevails on Saturday more so than distant past. In other words, Georgia's 17, 19, 21, 23 dominance, I don't think it's that game. I think this game's on Saturday is closer than that. Do you agree?
Yeah, Georgia's been able to get in at least the high 30s each time they've gone into Neyland Stadium. I'd be pretty floored if they're able to do that this Saturday. Even with the offensive struggles that we've seen, I've always sort of had this as like a 24-14, a 2017 type game where it is close, it is tight. Maybe Georgia gets a late touchdown to cover the spread and expand the margin of victory a little bit. But I think that this is going to be just an old-fashioned knock them down, drag them out, pull them in the mud type game. That I think Georgia's toughness and physicality, I think, is just going to make the difference at the end of the day.
Kind of great stuff. I appreciate everything you write. DawgNation.com. Love your coverage from Athens. Can't wait to see you in Knoxville on Saturday. Dog Nation Invasion. We're going up there and we're bringing heck with us, so I can't wait for it. I will look forward to talking to you soon.
Yep, as always, it's a pleasure.
All right, so that's good stuff from Connor Riley. We're running a little late, so we're going to keep the train on the tracks here and get ready to jump straight to Jake Fromm for a Kroger Fresh Take, because I can tell you what I think it's like to play quarterback at Georgia. I know a guy that knows exactly what it's like, and guess what? It's not always, a tiptoe through the tulips type of situation. Big games, hostile environments, good defense on the other side. Let's do Kroger Fresh Take right now. Get ready to bring in Jake Fromm here let me see if I can speak English. Bring in Jake Fromm here today. Jake, appreciate your time. Glad to have you with us. Let me start, if you don't mind, with a lot of people weighing in on what they've seen from Gunner Stockton. As somebody who knows probably better than any of us what Gunner's actually trying to do from a game plan standpoint on Saturday, what did you see from him?
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for having me on the show. Man, with Gunner, I think Gunner developed here in this game. Didn't rely maybe on his legs quite as much, but used his legs to get out of multiple jams. For me, this is less about Gunner, and this is more about this revolving door of people and injuries at the offensive line position. I've heard from a ton of people, hey, why can't we push the ball down the field? Why can't Gunner throw over the middle of the field? Well, guys, those plays were called, and 7-man protections were called in order to push the ball down the field, but we're still having free runners come and hit and decleat our quarterback. So that's an issue that has to be addressed. The scheme, Bobo, the intent is to try and push the ball down the field, but Gunner simply doesn't have the time. I feel for him, because I think his internal clock is a little messed up. He knows that that's a shot play being called. It's being dialed up. I know I'm getting max protection here, but I don't have the time that I should. And then it's kind of permeating into the rest of his offensive dropbacks and on all these different other play calls. And it's tough for him to find a good rhythm back there in the drop back passing game. So that's what I see. That's what I feel. Yes, there's times where there's guys open, but man, it's tough right now because he doesn't quite feel comfortable in the pocket because he doesn't know how much time he has there.
I thought it was a little bit telling in Gunner Stockton's own words post-game. He used the word confidence and he used the word comfort, essentially saying that he's looking for more of both of those things right now. As someone who knows what it feels like to be what Gunner Stockton is, what do you think when you hear a quarterback saying, just got to try to find a way to be more confident, especially knowing that in my mind, okay, well, you've got to find that confidence now in a step up in competition, in a tougher situation. It just seems intuitive that it'd be harder to do that at Tennessee, and yet that's what the job is. What do you make when you hear Stockton saying the things that he has said leading into this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's just about reps and that's about trust, trusting the guys around you. But as many reps as I can throughout the week to develop that kind of rapport with my guys. And ultimately, in order to gain that confidence, you have to go and do the thing. So you have to be willing to make a mistake at times and rip a football and in order to take that chance to gain that next level of confidence that he's seeking. So we'll see. This is a huge, huge test. It is going to be loud. I mean, for me, my just biggest thing that I'm most concerned about is that offensive line and being able to communicate throughout all the distraction, throughout all the crowd noise. They're not going to be able to talk, hey, we're working to him. He's the mic. This is where we're sorting. None of that stuff's happening. It's just going to be points, helmet taps, and hopefully you can hear a clap because it is going to be loud in Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, and the rumor mill will tell you, and who knows what's true and what's not, but the rumor mill will tell you that a year ago at Kentucky that Georgia did suffer from some of those communication issues, and that's one of the reasons why what you think is supposed to be an overmatched opponent, that game didn't quite work out to be that way. So what I'm asking is, would you mind telling us a little bit more about that, about how the communication works, about who's identifying what, and how you do get from center to tackle, and how do you play this telephone game when, and listen, you and I both have been to Neyland, you've been on the center of the field. I've at least been, on the sidelines. It is loud as loud can get. Those people will certainly do that. How does the communication part of this work?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you the answer that nobody wants is that it depends, right?
Yeah.
Run to pass. How good, how smart is your center? Obviously, it's Drew Bobo. This guy, he knows ball, been around ball. I'm sure that Drew takes a lot of the responsibility of Mike points and takes on a lot of the responsibilities just to take a little bit off of Gunner. That doesn't say Gunner's not capable, but when your center can do that, that is very helpful for the quarterback because, hey, is everybody lined up? What I'm looking at the defense. What's the play clock say? So there's a lot of things going on there, but I think it really starts with Drew Bobo and getting everybody on page. You are playing that telephone game of, hey, Drew's going to talk to each guard, and they have to go and in turn tell the tackle who we're working to. It's different versus a run play versus a pass play. So all those things are different. Well, if it's a pass play, it's third down, it's even louder, and I got to change the mic because I'm Gunner and I'm seeing them fake a blitz from one side and it's actually coming from the other side. So a lot of things going on. How do you communicate there? It is not easy. Probably be a lot of wavings, but also in order to help that process scheme wise, I imagine this is going to be a very simplistic game plan going into this game because of just the moving parts and the revolving door of players and guys because of injuries, because they're trying to figure out who the dudes are to play offensive line. I imagine a pretty simple game plan going forward. Slide protections, that kind of thing, runs that they feel very, very comfortable with. Just from ease and getting a hat on a hat in a run and a pass game.
I want to ask you about your own experience in Neyland Stadium in a moment. Let me remind folks prior to that, though, this is our Kroger Fresh Take with the great former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm on the program today. His insight always so valuable to us, and I'll tell you what can be valuable for you, which is getting more time in your life to enjoy the things you love this time of year and maybe putting some more money back in your pocket as well. You're driving around a bunch. It feels like that's all I do this time of year with my kid stuff and football games on Friday night, Georgia, wherever they're going, including Knoxville this weekend. That means it'd be nice to have a little extra money for the fuel pump. And when you become a Kroger Boost member, you can get that twice the fuel points on the dollars you're already spending at your local Kroger. Also, if you want to just be at home and enjoying everything you got going on, they got free delivery for you. I see the trucks in my neighborhood all the time. They're refrigerated. That means the stuff that's supposed to stay cold and fresh, it's going to be exactly that way. You can get meat, produce, things like that. You can also swing by there and pick it up, and they'll have it ready for you when you get there. Super convenient. Great time for you to become a Kroger Boost member. It's Kroger.com/boost for more. Kroger.com/boost for more on that. So, Jake, for Georgia, the last 4 trips to Neyland Stadium have been blowout wins. You were a part of those, 2017, 2 of those, I should say, 2017 and in 2019. And I think of those as, frankly, some of my more pleasant memories of your time as the Georgia quarterback. What does it feel like when you go into a stadium, very hostile at the beginning, by the end of the game, you look around, fans know where to be found, at least the orange kind. What's it like to empty out a stadium the way that you have 2017, 2019, big wins at Tennessee? How good did that feel?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's an us versus everybody mentality. I mean, there is not much red. It is just straight orange, white, the checkerboard, the whole nine. I mean, they really do it cool and they do it right. Obviously, it's different, but man, you have to respect what they do up there because it is pretty neat and pretty cool. But it always starts with a fast start and getting out ahead pretty early and getting the crowd and trying to negate them as much as you can early away from that crowd noise. We accomplished that whenever I was there, which was always really cool and really fun. And man, when that stadium empties out late in the game, it's a cool feeling. And going on the road in the SEC for any place is very tough. And I don't know, man. When you come away with a win, it feels like you really, really accomplished something.
And I'll finish with this real quick. We all remember you kind of singing Rocky Top off mic when you left your press conference in 2019. Back then, it was all kind of huddled together like that. And you even in your remarks talked about how, man, I just want to go out there and have fun today. I just wanted to be my best, most relaxed self. And I think it takes a huge level of internal mental toughness to be able to do that, which is kind of what Gunner's going to call on Saturday. For that particular day, how did you do that? And how did you find that, if you want to call it like an extra gear of relaxation, how did you find a way to compartmentalize all of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I would just say peace, prayer. I mean, just kind of going back to my faith here on this. I mean, I'm just completely content, and I know kind of where my soul, where eternity lies, what I have my faith in, not in the game of football. So that was extremely helpful for me. And back to just singing Rocky Top. I mean, throughout the entire week of practice, Coach Smart just blares that as loud as he can all the way up, and that's the only thing playing on repeat. So you hear it at nauseum, and man, I love to sing. Something gets stuck in my head. I mean, it comes out good or bad, and it came out, I guess, in a pretty funny time there at the end of that press conference.
I love it, man. It's a great memory for many of us, and certainly a fun night. Hope to have another one of those on Saturday. Thanks for talking to us about it, Jake. I really appreciate it. Good stuff as always. Thank you for being here as a part of a Kroger Fresh Take.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Have a good one.
Good stuff.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
2 years ago, I think it was going to there in 2023. Georgia does its hype video every week like we do ours here. And the tag at the end of the video, it was just as they were going off. It was very light. You had to really, it's one of those things, if you know, you know. But at the very end, they did have the tag of Jake singing Rocky Top at the end of the video, which I thought was a really nice touch from Georgia overall. Now, let's get ready to go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And as I said, I believe yesterday, one of these days, whatever happens on Saturday will just be a memory and a story that we tell. And I cannot wait to tell the story of how Georgia, I'm going to be more confident than I actually am for a second, goes to Neyland and wins this game and brings it back home to the great state of Georgia. Can't wait to do all of that, and then we'll go on our DawgNation cruise and we'll talk all about it. But by the way, you don't have to wait for a DawgNation cruise to have a great experience on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. One of the things I love about the Royal Caribbean cruise ships, whether it's the Oasis class of ship like Utopia of the Seas or the brand new Icon class of ship like Icon of the Seas or Star of the Seas, is there are so many things for families to do while on board, including the Royal Railway. It's a very specially themed restaurant. It's on Utopia of the Seas. It's almost like being in a theme park where you go through a train station, you sit in a real rail car on the sea, by the way, and then through simulation technology, it feels like you're on a rail car. The current show rolls through the Wild West, and there's a sort of a dinner show that goes with it. Eventually, there's a plan to theme this around special holidays like Halloween, Christmas, things like that. It's just all the special touches that Royal Caribbean has just for families. Mini golf, the flow rider, the water slides. So many special things that if you want something where, I've got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So you got two adults and two kids of different ages. But our family, we always find an array of things to do on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. I don't think there's anything better to do for families than a great Royal Caribbean cruise vacation, especially if you've got kids of different ages or you're doing a multi-generational family vacation. So many great things to do with that. In fact, one of the things that Jessica Slater does a lot is she will book a lot of almost like family reunions, multi-generational cruises experience where the grandparents take their kids and the kids take their kids, and you've got this entire collection of a very large family going on a great cruise. It's a wonderful experience. Jessica can help you with it, so give her a call. 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147, or email her to learn everything you need to know about Royal Caribbean, jslater@dreamvacations.com. Okay, let's bounce through cruise around the SEC here for a moment. And let me start with Oklahoma's win against Michigan. And let me proclaim something I think needs to be proclaimed. I do not know if I will ever view Texas as an SEC team. I just don't know. They feel very foreign to me on that. I feel like they've been given a very cushy entrance into the SEC. I saw a thing the other day. There's only a handful of SEC teams that are not currently ranked the top 25. Somehow Texas plays about all of them. I think that tells you everything you need to know in terms of how Texas entrance into the SEC has been treated. By comparison, Oklahoma has not had the red carpet rolled out for them anywhere near as much. And yet Oklahoma is actually doing stuff to help the league, like beating Michigan last week, whereas Texas mostly just has its hand out. It is a very entitled fan base. It is corporate welfare to the nth degree as far as I'm concerned. So I'm here to tell you, I now think of Oklahoma as an SEC team. As far as I'm concerned, the SEC has 15 teams. Used to have 14, now it has 15. I think of Oklahoma as an SEC team. I think they've got an SEC-style fan base. I don't know how good Oklahoma is, but they played like an SEC team against Michigan on Saturday. It helps the league when an SEC team beats one of these Big Ten teams right now. We are in an arms race. It's good to get victories. Oklahoma got one. So Oklahoma, as far as I'm concerned, you are now in the SEC. I don't know that you live up to what you showed in this particular game for the rest of the season, just being honest. But as far as I'm concerned, you've done a lot more for me than Texas ever has. So therefore, you are A-OK in my book as far as I am concerned. Now, speaking of Texas, they do beat San Jose State on Saturday, but more struggles for Arch Manning. Now, speaking of manufactured controversies, there was certainly one of those as it relates to, I guess, Manning winces when he throws. And some people thought that this was, maybe the reason why Manning is struggling is because he's injured. There was a very colorful thing from Steve Sarkisian yesterday. I've told y'all I don't do gross, so we're not doing the Sarkisian stuff from yesterday. But Sarkisian made it clear that he does not think that Manning is injured at all. Made that very clear, for the most part. But it still does not explain the fact that here we are through a couple of weeks in the season against one good team, one team that Texas should handle easily, and we haven't really seen what we think is the best of Arch Manning as of yet. This becomes a story. Now, maybe like a lot of youngish, inexperienced quarterbacks, he'll eventually play his way into better performance before the season's done. My assumption is he probably will. But so far, this is not as advertised. And I told you before that there's a lot of stuff in the sports media that I think is essentially bad on purpose. It is designed to poorly inform sports fans, so they'll take their hard-earned money and run and go basically, make a bad bet and give the sports books even more of their money. I did not think that's what Arch Manning was, the same way Deion's arrival at Colorado was treated or Bill Belichick arrival at North Carolina was treated. I did not think that's what the Arch Manning stuff was. But boy, if he is more than a media creation, it's time for him to show that, I would say. And we'll be standing by to see if he does. Let me also give a shout out to Missouri. Now, you may wonder why it was that we spent so much of the offseason talking about Missouri, repeatedly saying on this show that they were our best SEC win total favorite. We liked them over 7.5. Why is BA talking so much about Missouri? Well, now you perhaps know. Close-ish game against a decentish Power 4 team. Missouri back and forth, but wins with some margin. All of a sudden, that 7.5 does look like a pretty good play. So if I say something more than one time, there's generally a reason why I did. And in the case of Missouri, perhaps now we can understand what that was. A team on the betting side that was not quite as fortunate on Saturday was Ole Miss against Kentucky. Ole Miss does win, but as we told you early in the season, Kentucky hadn't quite given up on the season as of yet, that this might be one of those spots where the storyline can't quite write itself so easily that people just thought, a better team on paper, Ole Miss, ranked in the top 25 to begin the season, getting revenge against the team that probably kept out of the playoff a year ago. We said, no, let's be careful. Let's don't do too much of that just yet. Ole Miss did win the game, but Kentucky kept it within the margin, which is basically what we thought would happen. And shout out to Mississippi State here, who got one of the biggest wins that program has gotten in quite some time. And once again, I would say that pretty quietly. Now, you won't hear, and always pay attention to the dog that isn't barking. When Florida loses to South Florida, and we laughed at that too, but when Florida loses to South Florida, it's all, boy, are we sure this SEC is blah, 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 blah. And if Texas loses to Ohio State, or if whatever happens, Alabama loses to Florida State, boy, the SEC critics come out of the woodworks. I'd say pretty quietly it's been a pretty good start to the season for the SEC. You're not going to bat 1,000, but you've got ranked Big 12 team getting beaten by the SEC's, on paper, worst team. A lot of SEC teams doing what they do almost every year, which is winning these games against Power 4 competition. And please, Just notice what you don't hear as it relates to that. Now, I've talked to some, believe it or not, fairly important people in recent days, and one of the things they have said to me is that they do believe that this year the committee will take strength of schedule into account in a way that is different than it's done in the past. I don't have any faith in the committee, but I've been told by people who are smarter than I am that the committee is going to care about strength of schedule this year. We'll see, because the SEC is doing a lot of favors for itself with the Power 4 non-conference games that it's winning, including, by the way, shout out to Vanderbilt. They were in a fight for their life at halftime against Virginia Tech and then poured it on in Blacksburg in the second half. That's a big win for Diego Pavia, Clark Lee, the Vanderbilt Commodores. That's a pretty big deal overall. So, it's fun to watch Florida lose. It's fun to watch Alabama lose like they did in week 1. But all told, you want your Power 4 non-conference games to go the way of your league because it gives you potentially a bit of a bargaining chip later on in the season. And thus far, SEC teams, for the most part, are taking care of business. You got to make sure you know that. Can't help but deny that. Okay, so let's get ready to wrap up here today. Let me do so by giving a shout out to our friends at the Georgia Spa Company. We love Georgia Spa Company. Brand new sponsors for us here. A big part of what we're doing here on game day. Let me tell you what I think would be great. You kick back, you watch the game in your hot tub, your spa. You get the TV sort of mounted up top. You see a lot of people doing that. If you want that sort of set up in your house, our friends at Georgia Spa Company give you a chance to do that with some of the more respected brands in the industry. I'm talking about Hot Spring Spas, Caldera Spas, Endless Pools, Tylo Saunas, and more. You can get all of those famous brands through our friends at Georgia Spa Company. Friendly expert staff that's going to get the right spa guru to help you get the solution you need for whatever it is that you want. 35,000 satisfied customers. There are more than 4,500 five-star reviews. That means the folks who've chosen to work with Georgia Spa Company for what they want, whether it be a sauna or a hot tub or a spa or one of these, you see the little smaller lap pools that people enjoy. It's great exercise. You can get a lot of that for your home relaxation needs. All kinds of options from our friends at Georgia Spa Company. So make sure you check that out today. Find them online, georgiaspacompany.com. for more on that today. That is georgiaspacompany.com for more on that today. Also, how about our folks at Cerchero? Speaking of game day, they're a big part of what we do on game day each and every day, and they can be a big part of your game day too. You got folks coming over to watch a game at your house. You got a big tailgate going on. You're going to love Cercheros. We had a great experience the other day. I went through the line, had my burrito made fresh for me. That means they're grilling up my veggies. They're putting all the ingredients hot and fresh on there exactly the way that I want. And the same experience you get from the friendly folks in store, you can have as a catering option. You got a group of 10 or more getting together to watch some football. The tacos, the burritos, the quesadillas, all of the stuff that Cercheros is famous for, you can have that for a great game day experience. There's 40 locations throughout the Southeast. They're also growing like crazy. When you're serving up fresh, great tasting, friendly Mex like they have at Cercheros, of course that would be the case. It's online at Cercheros.com. That is Cercheros.com for more on that. And by the way, just for fun, let me also give a shout out to our friends at Daytona Beach, 23 miles of shoreline. Off week coming up for Georgia next weekend. Another off week before the fall is done. Trust me when I tell you, these are great times to get away to Daytona Beach for an unbelievable vacation. You can fly there. You can get a great saving on a hotel or resort, and you can enjoy the fishing, the golf, all the fun outdoor activities, and the beach that made it famous. You'll love Daytona Beach. Memories being made there every single day. This is where I grew up going to. I love telling you about Daytona Beach. So online, DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. That is DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals for more on that today. All right. And as we say goodbye to you here today, I got to tell you, we got such a big response to what we talked about yesterday. And frankly, I'm glad to have something to lighten the mood as it relates to, what happened to Florida on Saturday, because we're all so tense about what's going to go down with Georgia and Tennessee this upcoming week. There is a debate going on because I don't do gross. The Florida player got the penalty for spitting. It is a throwback to the old throne shoe that created the golden shoe that still lives on with us today. Some debate, should we acknowledge the spitting on the show? It's tricky for me because I just think spit's gross and I just don't do gross. Some of you agree. Others of you want to see the spittoon. The idea of that's coming up. In fact, I'll show you our guy Jermaine King here on this. He says, y'all can just use a golden spittoon as an award. He says, they look classy and it's fitting. And he says, hashtag golden spit award, which I promise I won't be able to do. That's a little too gross for me. I think the problem for the spittoon is, not to say we won't do it, because a lot of people want to, and I'm going to give you more of this throughout the week. The problem for me for the spittoon is it looks like an urn. Does the average person in Northeast Georgia, when they see this, think it's a spittoon and not, it just looks like an urn to me. It looks like your Aunt Gertrude's ashes. I just don't know about that. I just don't know. But a lot of people seem to want us to do this, so we shall see. I am very divided about this, but we got as much feedback on this topic yesterday as anything in a while. So there is more spittoon talk coming, I fear, as a part of our golden shoe. For today, Jermaine, you'll get one. Lousy, stinking Gators, it is easy to make fun of them because they are the gift that keeps on giving. How about 1,767 days? That's how long it's been since Florida's beaten Georgia. That is our Gator Hater Updater. Y'all have a great day. We're back tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. We will look forward to talking to you then. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, when you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs, they show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price that's promised. We'll take your comments. We have Cody and Kaylee both here today. I don't know if we can get a mic turned on in there. Cody, especially for you, because you did make our water bottle a year ago that became a big prop for us. What do y'all feel about a spittoon? First of all, does the average Joe know what a spittoon is? And is it just too gross for the show? I want to make fun of Florida. I have a hard time doing gross. What do y'all think?
It does look like an urn.
It does.
It does. Just because spittoon, I mean, it's fun in the Old West, like you think about it, but I don't think about a spittoon very much. And so if I saw that, I'm not sure that I would know what that was just off the bat. And the Golden Spit Award.
Can't do it. Can't do it.
Or you're talking like loogie. Look, I've workshopped this in my head too. We're all thinking about it.
Yes.
How do we do it so we don't just go, ugh. You don't want to get the ick when you're listening to it.
Yeah, you weren't here yesterday. I said this to the audience, and you'll know this because we travel together and we spend a lot of time together. I don't do gross at all. Like a lot of people like gross humor. It just, and I'm not even like morally opposed to it. I just don't personally participate in it. I don't do gross. In going on 11 years of doing the show, we don't play gross bits very much. We just don't do that. To the extent that we do bits, our bits are usually not gross because I just don't do gross. I don't do bathroom stuff. For instance, there's a big funny thing to a lot of people related to Steve Sarkisian. We didn't swing at that pitch today. Not because it's not, decent content. I'm sure people are getting mileage out of that. I don't do bathroom stuff. I don't do gross stuff. I don't know why. It's not that I'm better than that. It's just I'm different than that. I just don't do it. So, my two concerns are I don't know that people know what a spittoon is, and I don't want to necessarily make it because, like I told the story yesterday, like my great grandmother and two sisters, they dip snuff. I saw more dip cups around my house or my family growing up. I know what a dip cup looks like, but if we bronzed that in some fashion, that would also, to me, just border on perhaps a little grosser than I want to be.
That ain't you in that bottle.
No, that's exactly right. That is exactly right.
Is the golden hanky in play?
Could be, because if you did the spit cup, you'd have to have the paper towel draping over it, because to me that's what makes it a cup, is the paper towel coming over it. But that's gross. That's gross. People do like the spittoon. I'm telling you right now, we got when I tell you a lot of feedback, we got a lot of feedback on the spittoon yesterday. So I'm going to show you more of that. By the way, speaking of words I don't know, SEM Dog, who's far smarter than I am, says, how about a picture of the cupsidor? Do y'all know the word cupsidor? He says it's used in a dentist office. He says, of course, you might have to explain what a dentist is to Tennessee and Florida fans, which is very funny. Great punchline. Great punchline. All right, let's see what else is going on. Spencer Clark says, how about the old Folgers can? Jonathan Aaron says, what type of quarterback would you want if you were a coach, mobile, gunslinger, or game manager? Well, you do want your quarterback this day and age to move. There's no doubt about that. It's just, look, as a fan, I think about what causes me frustration. When I feel like my defense has got everything covered and the quarterback just takes off, it's like 3rd and 9. I saw this last night with Caleb Williams. Now I have a hard time. So every night works out the same way, where our family's always busy. Finally get the kids to bed. I come home, lay down on the couch, watch a little TV for a second. I'm telling you right now, I am out in a coma in 9 seconds. Happened the night before. Didn't see the Buffalo-Baltimore ending. Tried to watch the end of Minnesota, Chicago last night. Didn't see that. But I did see the Williams touchdown that brought the game to the 2-minute warning, or almost the 2-minute warning, where it's, ball's in the 23-yard line. He sees an opening. He just goes for it. So you do like having legs. You do. But, y'all, especially at the NFL level, you got to know how to process the offense. You've got to be a processor. You just do. And people discount processing, reading the defense, knowing where to distribute, because it's invisible. People don't know what they don't know. And what people don't know are things they can't see. That's just what happens. And so we fall in love with what we can see. Big arm, moves well. We see that. But the truest things in life oftentimes are invisible. You can feel them. You can't see them. And so you don't, it is invisible to see a processor, but you got to have a processor at the position. Thomas Tyson mentioning Todd Monken, and around here, Monken is not deified. He's definitely not deified, but he's revered. That's what I'm looking for. Monken is revered. One of these days, we maybe should do, this would be a good idea. We maybe should do a DawgNation Hall of Fame of, over the period of time that DawgNation's been around, the figures around Georgia football that have been the most significant contributors to Georgia's success for that period, coaches, players, whatever else. Todd Monken would be in the DawgNation Hall of Fame. In the period of time I've been doing this show, going on 11 years, Monken's among the more successful figures, only 3-year period of time being here, but over that time, incredibly successful. Monken was a great offensive coordinator. People forget that in that time, there were some bad offensive performances. There just were. And I say that as someone who reveres Monken. Not every performance was a thing of beauty. It is true. Let's see what else. So Jack Fullerton says that Cupsadors are nicer and porcelain. Dental offices call it simply a spit sink. Well, there you go. There you go. Let's see what else. Kenneth Holt says Gunner's going to have to throw down the field to beat Tennessee, or they're just going to stack the box. Good thing for Gunner is 2 of Tennessee's starting DBs will probably be out. That's true. And Gunner is going to have to throw the ball deep down the field. But look, I think sometimes I'm different than some Georgia fans are. There are a lot of deepish throws that sometimes I don't really like very much. They just seem very low percentage to me. It's what I call used to be there was the run and shoot, and then there's the fun and gun. Sometimes I feel like you see the heave and hope, where it's just a deep shot down the field, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I don't really love those sometimes. That seems like a very low percentage play. Georgia had a couple of heave and hope games last year where got down big against Alabama, and it kind of worked, almost. Got down big against Tech, and it for the most part worked and gave Georgia a chance to win that game. But I don't love heave and hope offense. I really don't. Even the best quarterbacks are going to do, at best about 40-ish% on their throws, 20, 30 yards down the field. It's just not a high percentage play necessarily, but you do have to do some of it. But we gave you a number yesterday. Best quarterback in the game right now, best quarterback on planet Earth is Josh Allen. Numbers from a year ago still throw through at or behind the line of scrimmage a third of the time, nearly a third of the time, more than 30%, 31% in total of the time at or near the line of scrimmage, at or behind the line of scrimmage, I mean to say. So, yes, got to throw deep, but got to attack down the field into tight windows, but not exclusively. Not exclusively. Let's see what else. Aaron Dixon says he believes that Bobo and Gunner can get us a chip this year. Boy, I hope so. George on tab says, I don't mind a heave and hunt. Heave and hope if it's a third down. He says an arm punt is maybe better than a turnover. Yeah, in some cases that's probably true. Thomas Tyson says that Buster Faulkner would have Gunner Stockton in the hospital. Yeah, he'd probably run him a lot. I mean, like there are a few quarterbacks in college football right now that I just don't know how they make it through the season. Haynes King maybe one. Jalen Daniels for Kansas is another. I mean, some of these guys, they just run them like they're Jim Brown. It's like, golly, be careful with them. Scott Pete says he can't deal with haters of Georgia football that can't support no matter what. Look, here's what I'll tell you. I have no problem with bandwagon fans. I think being a Georgia football fan is one of the best experiences you can ever have. And to people who've only recently discovered that, I'll be honest with you, I'm glad you're here. I really am. I really am glad you're here. I think your life is going to be better because you have a community that you can form around a football team. I think you'll benefit from it. And I mean that, as corny as it sounds, I mean that sincerely. I'm an earnest person, perhaps too earnest, but I am. Here's what I can tell you, though, about a newish version of a Georgia fan. If the only Georgia you know is the Georgia that for about 3 years was mostly winning games by about 40 points, you may just be in GMI when it comes to what the world is in real life. And by in GMI, I mean not going to make it. I just don't know that everybody's got the stomach for what college football mostly is. Most college football fans go into a college football Saturday hoping the right confluence of events occurs that their team has a chance to win. For about 3 years, 2 of those were national championships, but a 3-year period in total, Georgia went into a game thinking, well, we definitely can't lose today, but how is this going to help us get ready for the game a month and a half from now we might lose? That is not normal. It is not real life. We said this yesterday about the 2022 team. I think the 2021 team is the best Georgia team of all time. I think the 2022 team was the most amazing. Y'all, they played, 15 games in total? Only 2 of them were even reasonably close. That's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And if that's your origin story as a Georgia fan, I just don't know that you're made for what the world is other than that. You know, it has been said that, tough times make hard men make good times make soft men, and soft men make tough times. It has been said. There may be a football fan equivalent of that too, where, some of us from a fan standpoint have been hardened. We have had some cold winters, y'all. We have lived through some cold winters. Some of you haven't, and it shows. And I'm not picking on you. I'm glad you're here. I really am. I'm glad you're here. Honestly, your life is going to be better because of your experience around Georgia football. But if you showed up at the party because of 65-7, I don't know, man. The world does not usually work that way, and you should just know that going into this Saturday. A lot of us have bitten our fingernails down to the nubs over the course of some really tough times in the past. Just be aware that it takes some real fortitude to actually have a favorite team that you do stick by through thick and thin. Doesn't mean that you can't say something bad when things don't go well. I've got no problem with calling balls and strikes. That's what we try to do here on this show. We try to call it as it is, as straight as we possibly can. But we also are not going anywhere either. One way or another, this is the business we've chosen. This is the life that we live in and amongst Georgia fans, whatever happens. Saturday can go very well. It can go poorly. We are still dressed in red and black, showing up here on Monday morning. We're not going anywhere. And not everybody comes from the same stock. Patrick Half, see, this is my formative years. 1995, thinking you had a chance to win at Tennessee. Robert Edwards is a little bit banged up. Tennessee players are twisting his ankle on every tackle. just despicable. Even back then, boy, I tell you what, even back then, just as bad as you ever remember. I always say that 95 team. Now this is the very flimsy stuff that my life is built on. That 95 team had a chance to be pretty good. Bobo ended up getting hurt. Edwards got hurt, missed the rest of the season. By the end of the year, Georgia had, I don't even know who at running back, Torrin Kurtzy and all these guys. Eventually, they all got hurt. By the end of the year, you had Hines Ward playing quarterback. That was a blast. It was as fun as you think it would be. It was a blast. He was very good. But you talk about just like, duct tape and chicken wire. That's all that was.
All right, you willing to workshop something with me here?
By all means.
All right. What do we think?
All right, so that is the spittoon.
Yeah.
Now on the the desk,
we're just kind of seeing what it would look like. I don't know. It does kind of look like a trophy with Florida on it, or an urn.
So let me tell you what.
But I don't hate Gator ashes either.
Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you what I think might work. You know how if you get an Emmy or a Grammy, it's like a half a trophy that's also framed. You know what I'm talking about? It's like if you get one of the no, that's not what it is. It's a gold record that's kind of like this.
Yes.
It's not an Emmy or a Grammy, but it's a gold record. So you have the gold record, but the gold record comes in a frame. So I almost wonder if the spittoon is framed and it actually says golden spittoon in the frame with the bronzed spittoon coming out from it.
Almost like a shadow box.
Like a shadow box. It's a great way to say it. Like you're still in elementary school making a shadow box. Something along those lines, I think, might read better. And this is one of the things you have to think about for a visual medium is how, and Cody knows this, I'm saying this to the audience at large, you have to think about how it reads. And I think it might read as a spittoon if it said in larger letters golden spittoon. But I think there's enough of a groundswell for this. And frankly, the show is we played like 71 clips today. The show is 16 hours long. A lot of people sent in spittoon related content, just didn't have time to get it all in.
Right,
but
so we'll go back and take it off here. So, but it's just
I think we're on our way.
See how it felt. Try it.
I think we're on our way. Look, I think that the notion of the spittoon is far more popular than I realized. Popular enough that, because we're populist around here, popular enough that we're going to have to do something related to it. I think we're going to have to, and we're on to a good start. Let me go back to DawgNation.com. See how they're doing. DT on the subject of Tennessee fans clapping for Nick Chubb's injury. You listen. Listen, let me just not say much, but yes, all of that goes in the memory banks. It indeed does. DT says it's exciting that Jared Curtis is compared to Josh Allen. Yeah, I don't know that obviously he ain't being anywhere near that good. And weirdly enough, Josh Allen wasn't good in college. I'll never understand this. It's the weirdest thing in the world to me. Allen played at Wyoming. I don't even really think of him as being okay. He was not very good. Probably didn't play on a good team. That may be the full explanation, but not a good team. Ken Holcomb also says, like John said yesterday, Jake said today, long passes require the offensive line to give the quarterback some time. Yeah, that's going to be big. It's going to be big. And listen, to make a point we've made a couple times now, Georgia has not really run from that. People are saying that. I mean, Kirby is saying that. This is not a topic they're running from, really. DT says he wants to see Gunner run 12 to 15 times. I don't know that I want him to run that much, but I do want him to run some. And I think Jake briefly alluded to this. It did stick out to me. And I said going into the game, I didn't want Gunner to be Georgia's leading rusher against Austin Peay, but it is at least a little bit interesting that Gunner was the leading rusher against Marshall and they didn't run the ball at all against Austin Peay. That was at least interesting. Yeah, DT mentioned it. Yeah, Curtis was a high draft pick. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he wasn't a good college player. He was a high draft pick just because of the way he looks, which is clearly all he needed to be a player. It's just really weird that, you know, not good in college at all. And I think he's the best in the game right now. You know, whereas like the other projects like that, I would say SEC quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, not good in college. Not good in the NFL. Will Levis, I would say, not good in college. Not good in the NFL. So sometimes the NFL falls in love with these guys that, oh, this just looks like an NFL quarterback. A lot of times those projects end up failing. In the case of Allen, I mean, I remember thinking, why are you going to draft a guy from Wyoming that wasn't even good at Wyoming? What are we doing here? And, well, pretty clearly, this was an example of the NFL knowing what it was doing, apparently. Let me get ready to go to Facebook for a moment. Jeremy Harbin says, can't criticize Bobo till after the game on Saturday. First two games don't count, but if he calls it bad on Saturday, I'll condemn that. In a roundabout way, I sort of agree with that. You know, Kirby has used the phrase a lot, process over results lately. And I would say that Marshall, Austin Peay are process over results games. But Saturday's a day in which results matter. Now, Georgia can still win the national championship, even if it loses to Tennessee. But when you lose early in the season, it is hard. And, you know, we're going to try to find a way to make sure that we properly convey that in the event the game does not go Georgia's way, that the season's not over, but the season got a lot more difficult. We got to try to find a way to do both those things. Let me get some Facebook comments. Thomas Dyson asked a question. I didn't see it. Oh, how can you lead the nation in drops if Bobo isn't scheming guys open? Yeah, I mean, look. Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, Georgia had a lead offense in 2023. Bobo's last year in 2014, Georgia had a lead offense that year. I think, if I had to guess, I think Bobo's probably fine. Now, I agree with the previous commenter that said, well, you know, you also have to put up results. You're not fine no matter what. You have to put up results. But, you know, I know this is a tired topic, and I try not to just beat it with a dead horse, but if Georgia doesn't thrive this year, I have a hard time believing that Bobo will be the reason why. I think the arrow may point in some different directions if that's the case, if I had to guess. But who knows? Hopefully we never have to have that conversation. Let me get some Facebook comments. DMart42 brings up a good point. He says, are we really asking if UGA is elite? If Georgia's not elite, then who is? I'd say that's a fair point. Now, what we see true across college football is everything is less elite than it used to be. And we can measure this. This is quantifiable. You know, the current national championship favorites are somewhere around 6-1. It was not unusual in years prior to that. We saw national championship favorites in like the 2 to 3-1 range. We've even seen, briefly anyway, the national championship favorite be less than a 2-1 favorite. We have seen some of that before. So some of this is quantifiable that now, you know, it's just the biggest favorites aren't quite as big as they used to be. So is Georgia elite? I think that elite should be measured in comparison to the current standard within college football. And elite would be the rare category within that universe. And from that definition, Georgia can still be elite. But if you're measuring elite on the basis of history, well, I don't think any team in 2025 is likely to be a historically elite team. And to go back to the point that I made a little earlier about, as I'm waiting for Facebook to load, as about, you know, if all you remember about Georgia's domination, you don't have to dominate to succeed. Now, you'd like to, but if the two keys to victory are we're going to score 40 and we're going to shut our opponent out, most of the time football doesn't work that way. We have seen, I would say, the last two national champions win by succeeding. They didn't dominate. They succeeded. They were better than the teams they played. Michigan, they cheated. Ohio State took advantage of an expanded playoff, but they succeeded. They didn't dominate. They succeeded. And I'm just telling you, we may have to gird ourselves for a season in which Georgia's goal is success. Not, and what happens is like somebody mentioned this, Georgia fans have a reason to hate every fan base. They hate Tennessee because of this. They hate Florida because of that. They hate Auburn because of this. They hate Texas because of that. Ohio State because of this. Whoever Georgia plays, Georgia fans have a reason to hate those opposing fans. And so therefore, it is so gratifying to watch your team take the other team and just stuff them in a locker. That feels so good because you're getting the measure of retribution you want against people you don't like for something that you perceive them to have done against you in the past. And I get it. I do some of that too. It's just human nature. It just is. We are as God made us. I get that. But football does not always provide us with that. Football did provide us with that for a couple of years, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have fond memories of it the way that I do, because that's not likely coming back, because there aren't very many football teams that go on a barnstorming tour of death and destruction the way that Georgia did for going on darn near 3 years. It just doesn't happen that way. This year, the highest ambition for Georgia might simply be success, not total annihilation. Success. That might be it. It's a little bit like, now I'm going to shut up after this because Facebook is now loading. It's a little bit like, if you like baseball, watch playoff baseball. It's a miserable experience. Miserable. Everything is nerve-wracking. You give up one hit, you feel like you're going to lose the game because of that. You can't buy a hit to save your life. I'm always amazed at how baseball seems hard when you're hitting, but also it seems like when you're hitting, it's hard to get a hit. And when you're facing the opposing batter, it's hard to keep him from getting a hit. I'm always amazed how both things are seemingly hard. But baseball is miserable. You just sit there and just grind it out. And that may be what college football is like now. There may be a lot more grinding it out than it used to be. Joseph Kennedy says, just win the game. This is on Facebook, by the way. Joseph says, I'm worried about third down defense giving up big plays, too. There's going to probably be some of that. I don't think you can expect Tennessee to go a whole game without hitting on something. And, with the Tennessee people, non-ball knowers that they are, not a phrase that I use very much, but in this case I will. They'll go back to that 22 game and they'll be saying, oh, on this play we had so-and-so wide open and Hendon just missed him and this blah, blah, blah. What they don't realize is that good defense is not smothering every option equally. Good defense is taking away what you want to do most and forcing you to do something you don't want to do. In fact, I had a chance to have a meeting one time with a smart coach, not as a media person, just as a person talking. And he said something, I always remember that. He says, as a defensive-minded coach, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm trying to get you to do something you don't want to do. And in theory, what he means is, and hopefully that low percentage play will just stop itself. There is some of that with Tennessee where if you take away their run, if you take away the quick hitters and the layups, as sometimes Kirby Smart calls them, then sometimes the only thing left is their version of a heave and hope. And when it's just 2 inches beyond the outstretched receiver, Tennessee fans take some comfort in that. Oh, wow, we had the open receiver. We didn't quite hit him. Smart football, to an extent, understands that you're going to give up something. So therefore, if you're defending the toughest stuff to the best of your ability, that means the lower percentage stuff, you have to kind of play the percentages on a bit. And there's some of that when you face Tennessee. But there's no free lunch in life. Some of those low percentage, even hope deep shots, over the course of a long game, they may connect on one or two of them. Crowd's going to go crazy. It's going to feel even more anxious, and then you got to line up and play it again. You really do. Tennessee is the sort of team that makes me think more about stuff on a per play basis. You're going to give up the big play. They're going to move down the field, but you just got to line up and win the next one. Do the next right thing. You just got to line up and win the next play. And if you can win enough moments, you will give yourself a chance. Josh Hobbs says he thinks defense run game is something we can hang our hats on. Boy, I hope so. He says the Dogs going to be fine on Saturday. I do think that's what they want to lean on. I really do. I really do. Gary Holt says, I'd like for them to use Peanut the way they use James Cook. I understand why you think that way. For whatever reason, I don't think they think of him as a weapon coming out of the backfield like that. I don't. I think they mostly want to give the ball to him. And I don't necessarily fully know why, but I'm fairly certain I'm right. That when they throw the ball, they will throw it to Dwight Phillips. And names are hard. When they throw the ball, I think they're going to throw it to Cash Jones. Even though Dwight Phillips seems like the perfect back to throw to, and who knows, maybe they throw it to him on Saturday, and I'll tell you how wrong I was. But I sort of suspect they are likely not going to throw it to him. I think they want to hand it to him. And that's just the suspicion that I have. But I get what you're saying. And by the way, James Cook was a weapon by the time he left here for sure. Octavius Oliver says Georgia's got enough playmakers to win the game. I agree. And as I said yesterday, I want to see him, man. I want fingerprints on this game. The Jerry Rice line we played for you yesterday of, I want to feel a part of this game. Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch, Colbie Young. I want to feel a part of this game. Frazier, Phillips, Bowens. That's your trio at running back. I want to feel a part of this game. Lawson Lucky. Want to feel a part of this game. Jeremy Harbin says the Cook balled out on Sunday. Yeah, James Cook's also gotten paid too. I don't care enough to do the research on this, but I wonder like the highest paid players in the Smart era now are in the NFL. Cook got paid a lot of money, right? Big time payday for him. Yeah, Jonathan Aaron says, how about some brown water? Yeah, we are not doing anything to replicate spit. That's the one thing we're not doing. I just can't do it, y'all. I don't do gross. We had the lowest hanging fruit in the world with the Steve Sarkisian stuff, bathroom humor today. We just don't do that here. And it's not a moral thing. I don't think there's anything moral about it. I just don't do gross. All right, we got to go. Good stuff. Thank you for being here. 3 more days. We'll see if we can survive it. And then after that, it's DawgNation invasion time. Yeah, so can't wait. Go check out RS Andrews online, rsandrews.com. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric, showing up on time, doing the work that's promised for the price promise. You can trust them on that, including water heaters, air conditioning. It's still going to be hot. Get that AC tuned up to factory fresh specs. Honestly, eventually you need a new unit, but believe it or not, RS Andrews can maybe save you some money by getting some new life out of your old unit. Boy, wouldn't that be good news? Find out more today online, rsandrews.com. That is rsandrews.com. Y'all have a great day. We're back tomorrow. DawgNation Daily presented by ServPro. We will look forward to talking to you then.